How's it going, Dolphins fans? Welcome to a very special episode of The Extra Yard. I'm your host, Michael Christian, along with our other host, Juan Cardona and Kai-Chen Chisholm. Today, we are joined by former Dolphins and Houston Texans quarterback, Sage Rosenfels. Sage, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great. Enjoying a rare sunny afternoon in the suburbs of Omaha, Nebraska.
Ooh, very nice.
It might be 40 out there today. That snow is melting down. But at least it's sunny. And in Omaha, we get a lot of gray days in the winter. And it's not quite Miami weather. Those were 4 great years of my life in a lot of different ways, but the weather in particular. And because we didn't make the playoff, and so January we're already on vacation. We're already
on the beach already.
The Buffalo guys are planning their trip to Miami. We're already there.
Yeah.
So I did that for 4 years, and enjoyed January, February, and March. It's a little different than here, and still love following those Dolphins. It's been quite I left in 2006 to go to Houston. It's been quite the 15 years, I guess, of Dolphins since then.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of those Miami Dolphins, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Tua Tagovailoa was the starting quarterback starting at about the midpoint of this year. What did you think of his play? How do you think he did? What are some of the evaluations you have on him?
Well, before we get there, could we discuss that I think that the plan the Dolphins had, and you don't always get to pick your plan. You don't always get to pick who the veteran quarterback is going to be. If he's already on the team, that's even better. If he's like a Josh McCown type player, if he's from another team and you can sign them to be that guy.
Right.
I think the decision with Fitzpatrick starting the year and just sort of how it all played out, big picture wise, to me is so invaluable for the Dolphins, but also for this kid.
Right.
Who is, my rookie year, I had Jeff George. They fired him after 2 weeks.
Right.
That's who I had to go through training camp with as a rookie, and but Fitzpatrick and the way he plays and the way, it's a different, I don't want to compare the two, but in some ways, Aaron Rodgers learned so much from Brett Favre.
Right.
Learned so much from him. How they practiced, the throws they could make, the guts they had, the sort of intangibles and toughness and smarts that Ryan Fitzpatrick has, and for Tua to be able to get all that with more physical talent and a more accurate passer and a guy who spins the ball better, I think that is going to be great for his career.
Absolutely. And, he was able to play in, I believe it was 10 games. He was able to completely play in. And so what did you think of Tua coming into the season, right, based on his college evaluation? And did this season move that thought process you had on him one way or the other?
Well, let's just say this. He played in 10 games, as you said. I watched pieces of probably 2 or 3.
Right.
There's a lot I got to watch those. I get paid to watch the Chicago Bears game. Now I didn't even play for them. I just did analysis of Trubisky in the offense, and sure enough, I've been saying for 3 years that Trubisky should be running the Vikings offense because he's an athletic Jake Plummer type guy. They started winning football. I mean, anyway. That's a whole nother conversation. But I have not spent the last 15 years watching a lot of Dolphins football, and then obviously too I've only seen a certain amount. But what I have seen, and what I have also heard, through the Twitter sphere and whatnot, is that he is sort of who I thought he would be. He's an accurate passer. He moves around well. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's more Steve Young-ish. I know if there's a left hand, but he throws a great ball. Steve Young threw a great ball. Mark Trestman once told me he was his coordinator a long time ago back in the deck or in San Francisco. He never saw Steve Young not throw like a perfect spiral.
Right.
And guys that can spin it, it really does help. And in South Florida, if you can't spin it with the sweat and the rain and the humidity and the swamp balls that you get from under center, you're going to really struggle. You're going to really struggle, and especially if it's windy in that stadium, right? So I think the fact that he spins it, and again he moves well, his accuracy is good, makes good decisions, and he is where I thought he would be. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. Great, I don't know, but really good NFL quarterback. He seems to have the intangibles. He's likable,
right?
And he just got some great, the kid's been in a bubble for most of his life, right?
Yeah.
You grew up in the bubble, and then you're around he's got the big family, and then he gets to college and it completely different, sort of has their little Alabama bubble. Now, he's playing it with the Harvard man, Fitzpatrick, and learning the out of the bubble. He's seen it and done everything and made, but has guts, has like that thing you're looking for. It's just that I think is probably great for Tua, maybe someone to loosen up a little bit and, hey, you're going to lose some games. You're going to lose some games. It's really like, you got another one coming up, and you keep slinging it. And I think that might be, I think that's what Favre did with Aaron Rodgers. They taught Aaron Rodgers, you just keep slinging it. Just keep making plays. And then your actual natural talent will come up and will meet that with the mental stuff that you'll have after 5, 6, 7, 8 years,
Yeah, absolutely. But speaking of Fitzpatrick, I know Juan had some questions about, the way Fitzpatrick was used and whatnot this year.
Yeah. Because going into this interview, I think you were probably one of the most fascinating ones for me, just because of like the whole like storyline, and an ex-Houston QB, an ex-Miami QB. You have experience with the starter reliever system, and I'm sure there's difficulties with both sides of it, right? But how tough is it to come in, middle of the third quarter, almost fourth quarter, and really kind of spark your team to try to get them over the hump?
Yeah, I think it was my favorite aspect of playing backup quarterback. I mean, I don't know about my favorite, but up there. And I really haven't thought about it really until now. But you have nothing to lose and you're down 10 in the fourth quarter and you're in there for some reason. If you started the game, you're down 10, it's a different feeling. But even that, you start the game, you're down 10 at that point, you have nothing to lose. You can now take more chances and go for it. And if you can bring out some of that gunslinger mentality and Josh Allen type physical attributes in you, it's to play sort of a little more carefree and more aggressive is a heck of a lot of fun.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to do it multiple times in my career. I played. There's like a 537 article out there about like me being the GOAT of the preseason, and that's sort of insane, right? Because I was third quarterback for like half my career, so I'm coming in fourth quarter down 10. We ain't handing the ball off. I'm getting all these chances. I'm singing coverages, and like, let's go. 2-minute drill. I get 30 passes in the second half against, the Saints or something like that, or the Falcons in one of those Dolphins preseason games. And then with Kubiak, I had great success. All his quarterbacks play really well. Almost all his preseason quarterbacks play well. Being there. It's really, I was like good in the preseason, but having that mentality in the preseason when you're down, I had a lot of those chances that, and I think I always had a decent, I was a basketball player that when we were down or whatever, it was like, get the ball in Sage's hands.
Yeah.
And
nice.
When it's like,
he's gonna bring us home.
Yeah. Or we lose and die by Sage,
Wait, so you chose the NFL over the NBA? What am I hearing here, Sage?
6'4", 2 high school dunks. Do you know how bad
that's 2 more than me? Yeah.
I think that's 2 more than most people. So that's
I was a high volume shooter. I set the school record in 3-point attempts.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
not makes.
Yeah, you said attempts in that one.
You're key with that.
Just say 3-pointers. Just say 3-pointers. Don't even throw in the word attempts. People don't have to know.
No one's gonna look it up. It'll just be there.
I love like the random stats of my life, and like I've hung out with like the random quarterbacks, and they just like they can't talk about the interceptions or the sort of the random things of their past or that they weren't like the greatest to whatever. I think I enjoy all of it, and the good, the bad, and the ugly of my sports career, even high school sports career. I was a 5-sport athlete, like completely different than how the world is now. My senior had 5 letters. That's I was all state in 4 of them. It's
That's amazing.
It really is amazing. I probably have a Shrine Bowl jersey back there somewhere.
So, and let me ask you, because you were talking about the preseason, but I kind of want to give you some credit because you did it in the regular season too. And I'm more so curious which one like kind of stands out more, because for me, I was a young fan, right? And the 05 one with you playing with the Dolphins and against the Bills, that one stands out to me a lot because that was probably when I was first starting to get into the Dolphins. But then the other one for me is also the Texans, because you went into the fourth quarter down 32-7, and you literally brought them up to 36-35, and they ended up kicking a field goal at the end. But
if you went like back in big picture, that Buffalo game,
yeah,
and randomly my high school coach was at that game, and he had never seen me play in the NFL, and he played at Iowa State. That was year 5 for me. It was the Nick Saban year. Yes, I mean, I have a chapter in my book of the Nick Saban year, and this is a big piece of it. But it was the moment where I felt I made it. I made it in this league. I can play in this league. I calmed down. I felt like I sort of knew what I was doing. The game wasn't too big for me.
Right.
Wow. Amazingly, it had come after, I think a week or 2 weeks earlier of me playing terrible in the Cleveland Browns game, in which I literally thought my career was over.
Oh gosh.
I think I was 4 of 10 at halftime for like 20 yards or something like that. And I had 2 interceptions. It was just an atrocity. And I got thrown into that Buffalo game. That was one of the biggest moments of my NFL career in a lot of different ways. Probably why I was on a 1-year contract, so I hadn't really played that. I had to start the year before because of Jason Garrett being my backup 2 years prior, and then he becomes my quarterback's coach was Saban. That was a big moment for me. The Jets game, actually, a couple weeks after that. I think it was 10 at halftime.
2 weeks later,
2 weeks later, I came in and threw a couple passes. We scored a couple of touchdowns, and then we won that game 24-17 or something like that. That sort of solidified that I can do this. I get signed in Houston the next year, back up David Carr. And then the following year, Matt Schaub kept getting hurt, and I kept playing. I started playing a lot. It seemed like half as much. I kept finishing these games where he'd get hurt. And the Tennessee Titans game was like, that was my record. That was like my record-setting day. I threw 4 touchdown passes in the fourth
quarter.
That was Ryan Fitz, but that was my Ryan Fitz. Right? But then the next year I had a game where I threw 4 interceptions against Baltimore, and we just got embarrassed, right? So that's Ryan Fitzpatrick 2. So that was a big moment. But we lost the game, though, which of course sucks. They had 8 field goals that game. And so that was a big moment too. That was like that was like one of those Berman highlights it for the Sunday Night Football recap or whatever. And it was such a wild game and so many plays. And so I can remember almost the entire final going on off the game. And started off past Wes Welker on the speed, right? Long pass to Chambers, obviously. I think like 2 guys had just dropped passes right before the Chambers one too. Like Chris Chambers had one in the corner to my left, and then like Ronnie Bound just dropped a little 5-yard completion to the flat to my right. So 3rd and 10, and we went with that play, the play that went all the way down to Chambers. We got down to like the 20 or something, and we like a little sprint right to Wes Welker. Wes Welker. Saban figured out that this guy can play football because no one else had in the NFL. On that, and then a couple of plays later, and I think I ended up having a play where no one was open, and I ran down to the 1 or 2 yard line. And I knew I had one more play. It was 4th down. And found, and I was like, I'm going to go to Chambers no matter who's on him. And that was back when Nate Clements followed him for basically the whole game. But since it all went down at the end, they just stayed on each other's side and had this, it was like Jabari Greer or something like that on that right side. And Chambers went up and made a play. And it was the moment of my career where I was like, holy cow, that's my 15 minutes of fame. Anything after that's gravy. You know what I mean? So that was a big moment for me.
Did you make sure to bring your high school coach to more games in the future, just in case maybe he was that lucky token? You're like, keep coming back.
Like rookie contracts.
Fly him out to every game.
Okay.
Really quick before I know we're gonna get more into kind of the Tua stuff, but and I know you said you've watched only a handful of games, but a lot of I guess the discussion on Dolphins Twitter has kind of been, is Tua more so what we saw against Arizona early on in the year, or is he more so kind of what we saw in that down stretch? I know you said that you think he has the ability to become a good quarterback. Not sure if it's in that great, but even with the handful that you watched, do you think he's leaning more one way than the other, or do you think it's kind of somewhere in the middle?
I think I see a lot of positive qualities, and it's not to be like, Josh Allen, you saw some positive qualities, but he was not accurate his rookie year, and not great his second year. And so you're sort of going like, is he just this big, tall athlete? You know what I mean? I mean, Ryan Leaf was this big athlete who was a crazy playmaker in college too.
Ryan
Totally different scenario. Wow. He was a baller in Washington.
He was.
Yep.
And he was thicker and bigger and whatever. But, Josh Allen is just this big athlete with a big arm. But, accuracy is so important. And all of a sudden it clicked this year. I don't know if Tua has his upside. I don't think he has his upside. But I think being an accurate passer in this league long term is conducive to being a good to very good quarterback. Drew Brees, you think of what you saw Drew Brees as a rookie when he was in San Diego, right? You saw he played in a couple games and you saw some good things. He backed up Doug Flutie, but then that thing grows. If you have the right guy, it'll grow. It'll develop. He'll learn more about football. He'll be able to anticipate more. He just needs more time, more work, more games, more time, more, as long as attitude stays good through those losses, right? Like those traits you learn from Ryan Fitzpatrick of like, hey, you win some, you lose some. You don't want to take those losses too big hard in your second year. I said this to a Cleveland coach recently. Discussing Baker Mayfield, I said, you have to tell him your goal is to play in this league for like 15 years, maybe 20. And that is a marathon. You're going to lose games that you just can imagine that you lost, and you're going to lose games yourself. And you just have to go. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Right.
And, that consistent sort of thing every day. And I think that this kid has that. I think he probably has in his personal life, his priorities straight. So I think he has bigger question, not to change the subject on him, because we only know so much about him and where he might go, is who is going to be his coordinator and quarterback coach and that. And I don't think you guys realize the difference between, and I never played for Shane Gailey. I believe he was at the Dolphins with like Dave Fiedler before I got there with North Turner. I played for a lot of guys. I was in a lot of systems. Some systems make you better. Some systems don't know how to hide your weaknesses or the offensive line's weaknesses. Systems / actually play callers, play designers, creative guys, completion guys, guys who know how to get rosters right. And they need to find the right guy to maximize to his strengths, make the game easy on him, make the game easier on the offensive line. And that, to me, is really important. And when you're seeing the best teams in the league, Green Bay, for example, obviously all-time great quarterback. Aaron Rodgers' job got easier. Mike McCarthy made his job harder.
100%.
Don't make magic and hear all the tools, but when you call the wrong play, I'm going to be upset at you. And no running game, no commit. The bootleg and the play action stuff makes the quarterback's job easier. I don't know how to explain that to people other than I was actually a pretty freaking good quarterback with the Houston Texans under Kyle Shanahan and Gary Kubiak.
Yeah.
I'd run in and a couple other random guys who bounced around, and I could I get Andre Johnson wide open. I'm like, man, I've never had this before in my own life. Wide open, double moving on a safety, and I'm out here bootlegging because everyone's running down the running back, who's averaging 7 yards a carry in the second half. And that style of offense makes a quarterback better. Now that has changed into this mix of, well, they'll do that on the front side, but they'll have like a bubble on the backside, and you make linebackers have to make decisions, and it softens it all up, and the whole thing in jet sweeps. It's advanced, but those principles are the same. And I think the Dolphins need to think long and hard about, and this coach needs, because he's a defensive guy, he needs to look around and go, what type of offense do I not like to go against? Not just because of personnel. You watch that Green Bay offense and be like, you be the defensive guy and watch what they do. You watch what, obviously what the Rams have generally done.
Right.
Right. 49ers do. What Ryan Tannehill playing some of the best football the last couple of years. It's the same offense. Okay.
Hard to see, but good for him.
Juan's heart right there.
Or you go with a retread from some other thing, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not good. But I just think that they really have to think long, hard and try to get the best OC possible for this quarterback. It is huge. I would be upset if it's a guy that is known for he's the quarterback in the pocket, and they do what Pat Mahomes did. They don't have he's not Pat Mahomes. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're taking guys from what Pat Mahomes or back in the day was Donovan McNabb, and then trying to insert other quarterback, it just may not work as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. And find the offense that's really easy on the quarterback, and that's, in my opinion, that will make the easier Tua's life is, the better, because he is precise. And when they have to throw it and they have to do an RPO, he won't miss too many guys. He is going to be so good in that short to mid-range passing game, and he has the arm to hit the shots. I don't want him running at all. I prefer him running as little as possible, only when need be. And because it's a marathon. It's a marathon sprint.
Right. So do you think they go more so, because with Dolphins Twitter and just kind of the rumblings in general, they've talked about George Godsey, who's the current tight ends coach and was kind of acting as the QB coach, was with Tua on the sideline a lot, especially when quarterback coach Robbie Brown was out because of COVID. Do you think also, now with the Senior Bowl, they're going to be there, that's in 2 weeks, and they have to have that complete staff. Do you think they hire someone within like Godsey, or do you think that, Flores and them are looking outside, maybe one of those guys that was recently fired, or maybe has a different history, or maybe even college?
I think it just depends on if he feels like this is the offense that he'd like. It's going to be the same offense. It's going to have wrinkles, and there's definitely an advantage to keeping the same language. But does he believe that Godsey has the creativity? Does he feel like this offense had the creativity that those other teams maybe had? That again, I would hire a defensive coordinator that I would hate to play against. That's what I would do.
Right.
If I was a head coach, because back in my days, when you play the Jets, I was like, ooh, who wants to play the Jets or the Steelers in the preseason? Because you haven't had a ton of time. You're playing with second and third string guys, and they actually have a fairly confusing offense, and they know how to break down protections, and there's guys walking around, and that is hard for me. You line up, and I'm like, ooh, there's like a lot less film you have to watch that week because of that, So find a coordinator that, you wouldn't want to go against. The question is, was last year's offense that style of offense that the head coach, prefers? And so that I don't know that answer. That's
up to whatever he thinks is harder, I guess.
Yeah, that's their internalized stuff. There's contract things there. Could they get somebody else? Could they get like a Rich Scangarello, who was a 49ers Kyle Shanahan guy, just got fired with that Philadelphia staff. He was sort of like a consultant there. For me, do I know Rich personally? I do, but I would hire him. I think he's fantastic. Yeah. I think he was Drew Lock's coach as a rookie, and I thought Drew Lock played decently well as a rookie. I think he'd be a good candidate. That would again run the closest to the Green Bay and to the Rams, and then that I think he'd be a great fit. But I'm not an expert in coordinators around the league, but that style of offense, it's hard not to oversell it for me personally. It is because I played my best football on it. It just really is. And it's not about any other coach, but I played my best football in that style of offense. And I know how much it made my life easier.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this offensive coordinator stuff is going to be really interesting the coming weeks, especially because they just started interviews, as we saw reported on Twitter. But then you have this new debate coming up, which is Watson, right? And you have Watson now disgruntled with the Texans, as probably he should be. That's an organization that hasn't been run too well the last few years. Just curious, with that whole Tua versus Watson debate where they're saying, you trade away Tua and a couple first-round picks for Watson, would you personally make that trade?
before we get into this, Washington drafted me. That organization has been a disaster.
It has.
Gets worse and worse every year.
Then the Dolphins, which has been off and on.
It has.
There's been some light at the end. So having the Patriots in your division is not making life any easier.
Right.
Right. Then the Texans.
Fun times.
Then the Vikings, then the Giants. And so now we're on to team number 3. It just seems to me, and I've never run a team. I had never thought about, owning a team, obviously. But they have just consistently made really bad decisions, probably since Gary Kubiak left.
Yes.
And maybe that wasn't because Kubiak didn't need to go at that point or whatever, but it just sort of seems like weird trades, weird draft picks, weird decisions, trading DeAndre Hopkins for a second rounder or something, and getting basically back a way overpriced running back salary. David John, who makes that trade?
That's a Madden trade.
This is America. Yeah. Capitalism is supposed to be sort of an equal barter of goods. And I don't even know I don't even know what that is.
Right.
And when those things happen, obviously the Tunstall trade too.
Oh.
And I was in that organization. So do I know Rick Smith was the GM. He's not the GM anymore. There's I was listening to a Seth Payne podcast down there. He was a teammate of mine. Went to Cornell University, and he does a daily radio show down there. And
right.
My buddy's doing a podcast down there yesterday, and just sort of listening to the timeline. They went back to April 2nd, 2020. Do you remember what that day was? And it was that was the day that something happened that led to, DeAndre Hopkins being traded a week later. We're
right.
off 2.5 weeks into COVID, and, no one's left their house, and Tom Hanks got it, and it's just, seriously, the whole last few months have been wild, right?
Yeah.
I totally lost my train of thought. Where are we? Where are we?
We're on the Tua versus Watson. Would you make the trade?
Watson's a great quarterback right now. He's awesome. He was awesome in college. He's awesome. I think I didn't realize how good he was in college, but when guys just win, and then they also just are pretty inaccurate, I feel like he's been in an offense where it was sort of like Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. It was
go get him.
And we're your best receiver too, that's why you're at it.
Right.
But they don't do good play action, and he's not wide open on the edge and be able to even use that creativity. Yep. And I feel like they make his life harder. That playoff game last year against Buffalo, I'm watching both of these yahoos just run around like crazy, making plays, throwing laterals. 4th down, should have gotten sacked, and the quarterback spins out of it, and he wins the football game. Kirk Cousins has never won the football game like that.
Bring him up to just immediately the first person you think about.
But he is such a good player. I can only imagine if he was in the right offense. So again, maybe as they're looking at this coordinator position, they're not also looking at it's not a bad play here. You guys know what the Senior Bowl usually is? The Senior Bowl usually is it's a coaches convention. It's where guys that are get hired. Okay, it's the whole thing. So who's out there, who's fired, who's whatever. He also has an opportunity here to watch this quarterback's coach for 4 or 5 days, be the coordinator as he's looking for the next coordinator. And we'll see how he does and evaluate the current coach / coordinator. I think that's a play. I don't know if that's what they're doing.
Right.
But they may already have a guy locked up, right? You just don't know. But they'd also be looking out for Deshaun Watson. And I think do you make that trade? Yes. Yes, you make that trade. And it's no disrespect in any way to what they think about Tua.
Absolutely.
There's just easier roads to get to where you need to get to, which is win a Super Bowl. Having one less first round pick isn't great, but you're really you're getting a guy who's ready right now, and it's probably has been massively underutilized and could really bring your team to greatness, to years of greatness.
Exactly.
Consistently deep in the playoffs, consistently being, now that Tom Brady's out of there, that AFC East team, he could be your game changer that everyone's like, well, it's really fun to have Deshaun Watson in your division, right? They get a defense around him, they get a running game around him, and make his life easier. I think I make that trade.
I mean, at that point, you've got Deshaun Watson versus Josh Allen twice a year for the next 8 to 10 years. That would be insane
sure.
to watch.
Just so when you just say, Miami versus Buffalo, and I think to myself, probably somewhere around early May, late April, I'd be in the weight room and saying, is the schedule out? And I was looking at it to see, when do we play Buffalo?
Yes.
Either early in the season or late in the season.
When do we play New England? Oh, crap. There's a Green Bay on December 17th in there, too, this year.
Yeah.
And you're just counting to see when you play these teams and where. And but that would be a great, that'd be a great a 2-team race. I mean, the Jets, it's just incredible. And imagine doing a Jets podcast. I mean, by the way, Jets Dolphins, I think the most fights of any fan base combination of all the places I went to. Jets Dolphins had just tons of fights. Philly did come down here one time on like a Sunday night game, and there were just haymakers going everywhere. But I would say Miami.
That's Philly, though.
Miami, one of the top, say back in the day, was definitely one. You have all these people, especially late in the year, coming down to stay at mom's or grandma's place in Boca, and it's like, let's go to the Dolphins game because our Jets, and they're looking to drink beer and kick some ass.
Yep.
Come down there and they're losing or win, doesn't even matter, and it's 75 degrees and they're like 7 hurricanes in. It's ugly in Miami. Probably of all the places, probably the most just like, oh my God, look up there. It's like mid-4th quarter and be like, Norv's calling a play. It's like, there is a section over there. It's like a European soccer thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyway, I have so many fond Dolphin memories. I can't even tell you. I have so many fond Dolphin memories.
We'll finish off with one more Tua question, then we'll ask you for a couple of those memories. And that last question is this: regardless of if this trade gets made or not, or if this ever actually gets talked about between the two teams, right? As far as we know, the two teams haven't actually talked, right? There's a lot of speculation out there about what's going on. No matter what's going on, though, Tua has to know this is happening, right? He has to see Twitter. He has to know that these conversations are being had, at least in the media. What is that like mentally to know your name is being out there with trades and stuff? Because you were traded a couple times in your career. Just what is that like from the player's point of view, right? What's that mentality like?
I feel like a lot of times your agent knows. This is maybe one of the things where they can know. They
share the same agent.
He's going to want maybe a nuke, maybe not. I don't know how the salary cap stuff works.
Right.
But this, I guess, is the job of the agent, to know as much as you can know. You can't know, and you might not know anything, and that just might be the deal because both teams have nobody, making any leaks or anything like that.
Right.
But everyone's talking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Scouts are talking to scouts. You guys don't realize it's a whole community over there, right? It really is, because you bounce around from team to team and trainers are talking to so-and-so. As Kevin Rogers, one of my quarterbacks coach, once said to me, it's 80-20. When you have that coach with the other coach the night before the game who's coming to town, I'll see you on the field and talk to you for a couple of minutes and blah, blah, blah. I come out early.
Right.
It's always 80-20. Only give 20, always get 80. Everyone's always looking for some information. And that is the entire league of the, 5,000 employees or whatever is.
Right.
It's nonstop look like this. And so everyone's talking in some way. It does make sense. It does make sense. And obviously, if it's any issue, it's because Watson is trying to get out of there. So if anything, his agent has the ability to say that I'm talking or not talking to people.
And they share an agent, as Juan pointed out. Tua and Watson actually have the same agent, so that's even more fun.
I'm Tua. I'm saying that's fine, but I want a immediate sort of contract extension too. I want some more money. You're gonna move me from one really humid former Sage Rosenfels to another really humid former Sage Rosenfels team.
That's the only reason why they're talking is that Sage Rosenfels connection.
Special wording in the contract
right.
for those types of moves. So yeah, I'm sure his agent's right in the middle of it.
Absolutely. So
quick, do you think that with the compensation side of things, Deshaun has a no trade clause in the contract that he signed last off season, and I guess it's been rumored that he'll only waive it for a team he wants to go to. Do you think on the business end of things that maybe the Dolphins are able to get a little bit of a better deal for themselves because the Texans would be so strapped if he went to Caserio and said, that he wanted out?
That's a really good question. A no trade clause, by the way, really is just a no trade to a team I don't want to go to clause.
Right.
If I want traded, I want to go somewhere else. So anywhere is better than here. Some teams are just, the right situation. Some teams you don't see any light over there. Mm-hmm. And it's really not a fully on no trade clause. But I can see Watson definitely wanting this move, playing for this coach, for this general manager in this city. He's a SEC Southeastern Conference guy. I can see him doing whatever he can. I think he's probably fine financially. My guess is he makes this play not just for financial reasons. He may even say, I'll pay you back $5 million. I don't know. But I don't think it's not one of those disgruntled contract scenarios.
Right.
Yeah. He really felt disrespected by not being included in this GM search. And it was really
should have been.
And that gets me into the other chapter of my book, discussing the McNair family and River Oaks Country Club. You know what I mean? I'm just kidding. Nothing but nice thing to say about the McNairs. But it seems like the mismanagement of this thing over the years. And
gone out of hand.
2 years. And just, I don't know. They hired a couple of New England people now. You got a couple of New England people in there. They were just trying to do England. Romeo Cornell was the whole thing's New England.
Right.
But is it just the scraps of the Bill Belichick and Tom Brady shine? And so that I like where the Dolphins are going from,
regardless of the trade.
Of the trade, I do. I like if I was going to choose to be the quarterback of one of those franchises. I wouldn't have said this maybe 10 years ago or something, right? But right now. Much more stable. I think ownership is starting to understand it and get it more and more. And I think obviously he hired the right GM. I think it's like obviously the right head coach.
Right.
And that might be super with that head coach for various reasons. Might be super intriguing for Deshaun Watson. He's going to have a defense. He's going to have a special teams. He's going to have the type of leadership that he is looking for, that he is looking to lead in that same way. And that might be a beautiful relationship.
Absolutely. Before we kind of let you go and kind of hear what you're doing now, I'm going to ask you for 2 predictions. First prediction is going to be tonight's national championship between Alabama and Ohio State. And the second prediction is going to be who do you have winning the Super Bowl and who are they beating in the Super Bowl, right? So what's the Super Bowl matchup? Who wins and the national championship?
Okay, tonight. Let's first start. 8 teams in the playoffs would be amazing.
Absolutely. That would be great.
And this is Ohio State's a great football team, obviously Alabama and Clemson and Notre Dame. And next you will swap out Notre Dame for Georgia, and then the next you will swap out Georgia for what, right? That's what we're doing here, right? Oklahoma, right? That's what we're doing here. These 3 teams and 8 teams would just make that floodlight go a little bit wider and add a few more just brands to the whole thing. It's a couple extra games or whatever it is. I just think that playoff would be so much fun. And and you're going to get Alabama against the 8th ranked team from the smaller conference, and it might be a 56-0 game, but who cares? Who cares? And so anyway, having said that, Alabama is so good. I mean, it's just something. And Ohio State's really good too. It really is. And it's we'll get to on what I'm doing now and like Justin Fields, for example, right? Or Ian Book, of which I'm going to go train here in a week. But it's just Alabama is so talented and they're well coached. They are coached like it's the NFL. Are they motivated and all this? Yes, but they are coached like NFL players. I don't know how much those kids go to class. There's only so much time to coach, really do football. And when you're already getting all the greatest players, you don't have to recruit as hard. Now you can actually be more like an NFL coach who don't recruit at all. They just have to do a little bit of scouting. And so when you can do less of that and still get the 4 and 5 stars consistently, now you're talking about another level of actual teaching and football and real coaching. And they just have every competitive advantage possible. They just do. Until Nick Saban retires, it's like Tiger Woods or the field. And there's a time it was like, well, Tiger Woods, it's not control here. It's sort of like with Alabama. Yeah, so somebody else could win it this year, but just consistently they're so good. Green Bay Packers out of the NFC and the Chiefs out of the AFC. That's how I see it.
I like it.
I think the game will already come down to whether the Green Bay Packers can run the football. And if they can run the football, they will take the clock. It would be like a 35-25 clock game. They'll get shots in the play action stuff. Sometimes Kansas City secondary guys are just overly aggressive. They'll get a double move, and the Packers may have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. That's who I like right now. Yeah. But I think those two teams are destined for the Super Bowl.
All right, that's so what I said a few weeks ago. Alabama and Green Bay are your champions.
I think I just hope Green Bay.
Right.
I just and I grew up a Bears fan and I played for the Vikings and covered the Vikings for years. And but I think that we have seen a completely different world of Aaron Rodgers, sort of really probably a third or even a fourth act here. And we're seeing like maybe the best of his talent, but also maybe his attitude. And the whole thing has been really refreshing. And he's so much fun to watch. He just is so much fun to watch. But he's got to get that run game going. When he has the run game going, it just opens up his magic. When it doesn't, it can get ugly. But he's been a lot of fun to watch. Those guys who are 35 and older and playing at a pretty good level, I'm watching Breeze. I'm like, oh, my God. How is that guy I got drafted with still out there playing football?
Yeah.
I just can't believe it.
That's nuts. So what are you up to these days, Sage? I know you do some writing for The Athletic. You'd also do some analytical work with Score North, I believe it was.
So you're just doing the research thing in the back of the history of my life. I have done more radio shows and podcasts, and some paid and some not paid, and Toronto and Chicago and New York and here. It's just when you're in the media and you're just like taking hits for cash. It's I don't even know what that is, right? Or doing radio shows for the year for money. I do an Iowa State radio show for an hour on Mondays. They give me $100. I get to the entire state of Iowa. I love it. I have a great time. Right? Worked every penny. But I've had like 20 of those things over the years, and so this year. I've also done, post-game shows. I've done NFL Network stuff. Just, I go cover games. I get to travel sometimes, cover a Vikings-Bears game. And for a couple of different radio stations getting paid to do their Monday morning quarterback type of work. I read The Athletic. My first ever article I ever wrote was in Sports Illustrated. I read it. Vikings fans seem to really enjoy it. It's that Bounty Gate game.
And I have to ask, how do you get because you were a player at that point, right? You were on the team.
I wrote it in the days following the game, but I didn't go back and edit it and really sort of top it off until 4 years later.
Oh wow!
I was just out of football a couple months. I was in New York visiting my aunt. I had a cup of coffee with Peter King. And I think I have a pretty good thing. And actually, I was just discussing post career, and we started talking about that Bounty Gate game. And we were sitting there for an hour and a half, and I'm telling him stories, and he is just like, "Holy cow!" I go, I wrote this thing 4 years ago because I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I had that thing where I'm not sleeping well, and I just wanted to get it all out there to remember the whole thing and sort of document it.
Yeah.
And I put as much together as I could. You're done. I'm in Minnesota. It's February 1st or whatever it was. And I'm just going to be hanging out in the middle of winter with my kids off at school. So I'm going to sit there and have a cup of coffee and just get all that out. And so I got it out. And then again, went back and ended up in sports. Ended up in Brett Favre's commemorative edition.
Oh, cool.
That was my first writing. I'm not some great writer. I don't read a ton of books or books at all. I don't consider myself a creative writer, but, I feel like I just write what I talk and then edit it fairly proper English. But I do love analyzing football and analyzing games sometimes. Not as much as like having to watch 30 hours of film a week, but discussing how the game works and how the X's and O's work and the blitzes and the coverages and the techniques, which leads me to what else I do. I train some of the top high school quarterbacks in the country. I train some of the top college quarterbacks in the country for short spurts. Right before COVID, Ian Book was staying at my place. We were working out, but mostly watching film. Watching 5 hours of film for 2 or 3 days in a row. I'm going to go to train with him coming up, get him ready for the Senior Bowl as best as possible. We will. So this is where two worlds collide. I'm looking to who the coordinator is going to be.
Right.
And try to go back and figure out, okay, what is this offense? Where did that guy come from? Go watch some film. And when I show up to work with him, this is what I think is going on and how he's going to call things.
Right.
He shows up. It's not the first time he's heard the offense.
Correct.
This is another aspect of the Sage Rosenfels journeyman quarterback lifestyle that I in Omaha, Nebraska. So I do that. I haven't done as much media stuff this year. I sort of took the year off from a lot of things. I didn't get all the good stuff. If you can't travel to a Vikings down, I'm going to go down to Miami and cover the game, go in the locker room afterwards, chat with people,
right?
Catch up with the old security guard for the whoever, right? See Stu Weinstein and say, "What's going on, Stu?" Or run a Patrick Surtain or something like that. And have your work be like your excuse to go have a great time. Right. It's a great way to go. It's like the best way to go.
Yeah.
But when COVID happens, like you don't even get all those benefits. So I'm like,
why bother?
But I enjoy the work. I've enjoyed watching. I work in Chicago. I do a great Chicago radio show. I do Trubisky every single Tuesday.
Okay.
And I've enjoyed the flexibility. I've been traveling a ton. I'm really lucky I get to do that. Raising my kids. I got a 19-year-old son, 16-year-old daughter, and 10-year-old daughter that they are so busy with their stuff and trying to get to all their things. I am like the luckiest guy. That's what I am doing. I get to do so many fun things. I'm so thankful for my time in Miami, by the way.
Yeah.
Great years. I was just back there. I flew in there the 26th through the 30th.
Oh, very nice.
Joe Stone Crab put it in my belly, baby. And still got the hook up there with my guy at the door, still getting me. Just go ahead, just get right in there. Just get right in. I still got it.
Get them benefits.
I have occasional these things in random places in the country. It's so random.
Yeah.
And I really realized when I was there, I was like, man, this weather in the wintertime. It was like it was after Halloween. It was like Thanksgiving. There is nothing better from basically post Thanksgiving until like spring break or like that 4 months is just money. It's just money. And there's so many things going on down in South Beach. There's a music festival and there's this and there's that and there's the comedy festival and
the wine and food festival.
It is an international city. It's so, why it's so awesome? Because it's so close to the United States. It really is. It's so dang close. And so you get all the benefits of the United States, but like you don't have to actually be what? They are in that. Oh, it is in the United States. That's right. Miami is in the United State. Forget that. Because when I'm down there, it doesn't seem that way. And I love the music and the art and Wynwood and good restaurants on the beach and just having the ocean and the breeze and the sun. That is a magical place in the wintertime. I don't know where I was going on that, but I want to give up my love.
It's great.
Miami. Yeah. And what a great place.
Well, now I know I'm going to take a scrunshot of this. And next time I go to Joe Stone Crab, I'm gonna be like, "Hey, I know Sage Rosenfels. Whoever hooked him up."
No, don't do it for me.
But yeah, hey, we want to thank you so much for being here with us today, Sage. Great hearing all the stories and hearing all the stuff you've talked about on Tua, man. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Guys, don't forget to catch us this Wednesday at 7 p.m. We're gonna come back. We're gonna probably talk offensive coordinators and the wide receiver position, draft, free agency, all of that stuff. Don't forget to keep it locked in here on the 5 Reasons YouTube. Appreciate your time and have a good rest of your day, guys.
Hands up.